Hello, today's another different video. It's kind of a hybrid between the series I like to call underrated throwers, and it's also a debate with the pros and cons of the two different schools of thought of the rotational shot put finish. But we'll get to that first. Let's first start with just a technical analysis of CJ Hunter. Just a little background of why I think he's underrated. One, he didn't throw 22 meters. He got close. He threw like 2180 something, I think, with his PB. I'll put everything down below. But he won the world champs in 1999. He got second in Olympic trials in 2000, but couldn't go to the Olympics due to an injury, so John Godina went as a wild card in his place. And overall, he's I don't remember everything off the top of my head. I'll list it all down below, but I think he has a really underrated technique and is one of the first people I've seen start with what I think Thomas Walsh has perfected, which is the offset. So instead of starting here, like more lined up to the middle of the sector, he's set up offset. So his left foot is in line with the middle of the toe board. Okay, but we'll play this a couple times. This is him at the 1996 Olympics. This was only like a 20-meter throw or something. Nobody really threw that far here, but yeah, let's take one more look. As you can see, a very, very big man, as well all shot putters are. But especially at this level. But okay, let's go through this. So he has a very 90s style, which is super low, kind of not hunched over, but his chest angled down instead of straight. And this was very common back then, and it's still common. You see like the Cal throwers and Turner Washington. You see a lot of people still do this. So starts down, like chest down, very gets his weight over pretty good. Chest is still down. Has a very low sweep. He's one of the proponents of leading with his knee instead of leading with this. Instead of leading with his right foot and swinging it around, he leads with his knee and then keeps his foot very low to the ground, so he doesn't get that much of a sprint. But what this does is it gets you a very good hip curl, because normally to get this kind of a hip curl with leading with the foot instead of the knee with the sweep, you would have to sprint a lot. But because he doesn't, I forget how tall he is, but this could be due to how tall he is. I forget, though. He doesn't look that tall, but I could be wrong. It is a video. But not in the air for a very long time, if at all. I can't really tell because of the quality of the video. It looks like he touches down right there. So yeah, like a pretty good sprint. Touches down right there. I love this angle that he gets with his right foot in the middle, so then he doesn't have to turn as much. Gets left foot down really good. And this is what I want to talk about, his finish mainly. Oh, also another note before I get to that. So the reason why this was such a big style back then, and is still a good style now, is the chest down. Is because if you do this kind of style correctly, if you do chest down in the beginning, chances are you have a very high chest in the front. But the important thing to watch out for if you do this kind of stuff, if you do this kind of technique, you see how he's stacked and he's not just hunched over. So you know, like when you do a RDL or like a good morning, how your hips go back but you're still stacked, like everything's in line. God, I can't make a line there. Everything's in line and it's not all hunched over. So that way his upper body follows his hips. You notice his hip goes up, he goes up. His hip goes down, he goes down. He remains stacked this entire time. Very good power position. A little open. He could have caught it a little further back. He stops rotating his right foot. But this is because he does a glide finish. See how he just sticks it? And this is an anomaly. He usually does this kind of finish. So, we'll get to this. Now, as you can see, he's a very big man. I don't know if he was a glider for a very long time, but this is like a textbook glide finish. But what the interesting thing is that he does it with the rotational technique, obviously. This was a kind of big style back then, when there was still a lot of really good gliders and not many good rotational shot putters, even during this time. So people still believe that the glide was still like superior to the rotational technique, even though Randy Barnes broke the world record and he won this Olympics. But there were still, in terms of like the top 25 all time, there weren't as many like good rotational shot putters as opposed to gliders. So this kind of style was still really predominant, where it's kind of a hybrid. Instead of starting linear and finishing like a glider, he rotates and finishes like a glider. And this is, and I think Ryan Krauser is like a modern day technique of this. Well, he does rotate through, but he finishes like a glider almost. He gets a lot of rotational, but he also gets so much out and so much like forward. He's not on the ground like that long, like in terms of rotationally. He's just he's not on the ground rotationally that long. Is more of a byproduct of him pushing that much. So you see, like, he's not really working the ground. He's pushing forward. And then he gets a height from his chest and sticks the finish, looks back. Oh, it stops there, but he looks back and saves the throw. And if you watched my previous video on Ralph Bartels, I go more in depth of glide finish. But this is a school of thought where you don't rotate that much at the finish for a rotational. You just do a glide finish. He's a little hoppy here. And like this kind of finish only really works, like if you're built like a glider. Like CJ Hunter could have probably been a pretty good glider. Just judging by the way he's built. He's built like a lot of good gliders. Honestly, he's kind of built like Ralph Bartels, but but yeah, he doesn't really rotate that much. He gets like that, and then he pushes. So instead of just rotating all the way through and pushing forward, he kind of just rotates, just slams his hips and pushes forward. Instead of getting a nice long pull on it. So instead of catching it back, like here and then rotating through, he purposely lands like this where his left arm's out of the way, so then he can just boom punch it. So I thought that was very interesting. So the pros of this: one, if you're really strong and explosive, this could be a superior technique. It's easier to do than rotating all the way through. It requires a lot less patience. You can just use a lot of brute force. This is probably a good technique for high schoolers, especially if a high schooler isn't going to go to like the college ranks and throw the heavier weight, so they can get away with this. And it's just easier to teach it. But other than that, the cons for this kind of style, you don't get a lot of rotational energy. You're up, so you don't work the ground as long. And as you can see here, he's kind of jumpy. Although it doesn't really matter because it's out of his hand right there. But even still, like, he doesn't get that. He doesn't work the ground that long, so he's not really like adding anything to it. He's just using all the momentum from the back with a short little. Like, he does work it. Like, don't get me wrong, he does work it. Like, just that like little tiny bit. But because he moved out of the back so fast. Alright, let me rewind this, and you'll see how fast he is out of the back. So like he's really like using acceleration. He's really using acceleration and momentum for this kind of throw, like you would a glide. And then just pushes with his right and just extends on the finish. And yeah, so he could throw further with like a modern day style technique, or like a Krauser or a Walsh or Kovacs kind of technique. But this was a style back then. People did throw far like this. I mean, he threw like 2180. And he won a world champs and was like a 2-time Olympian. So, I mean, he's obviously good. He was one of the predominant shot putters in the 90s, especially late 90s. And yeah, but I just thought this was very interesting. I don't see a lot of people talk about this kind of style, but I also think he's underrated because he's one of the first people I've ever seen start like this. And he might have been one of the pioneers for this kind of technique. So he led the path for like a Marcus Thompson, Tom Walsh, me. I start like this now. And yeah. I hope you guys like this, and let me know if you want me to do any other people for this. Alright? Have a good day.